Hi, Joan. It's a privilege to be here. The Upstate Coalition to ground the drones has certainly been exemplary. You've got people in prison right now, just sentenced to 15 days in prison, and they don't blink. They'll be right back out and at it again, and they've got a good support grouping, and I think good regional coalition work as well. So I was very happy to know that they're organizing again for a conference, and it's an important time. The statistic that just sort of sticks in my craw is that I think the Air Force has at least 70,000 analysts just poring over the drone footage that's collected over the skies of Afghanistan. And they say they need 100,000 to adequately understand patterns of life in Afghanistan. Well, if they want to understand patterns of life in Afghanistan, they should go live with the widows and orphans on the mountains who don't have water coming into their one-room hovels, and they should live in the refugee camps where 400 people are driven into the cities every day by the war.
Yes.
And they should live amongst the people who are lying prone, stiff as boards, because they're afraid that one of these drones is going to attack them overnight.
For good reason.
Then they'd understand patterns of life.
You've been to Afghanistan as well, where drones are a problem, I believe?
I head from Syracuse to Afghanistan on Sunday.
Were you part of the Pakistan delegation as well?
I'm not allowed into Pakistan at this point. I had gone there 3 times, and I don't feel remorse for what I said, but I wish that it hadn't been recorded. I said that we were interested to understand more about Pakistani government military offensives against their own people.
That would be really
that's red flagged me.
Not.
But we think it's really important to understand what's happening in North and South Waziristan amongst people who are so isolated. It was really extraordinary that the group with Code Pink and others were able to enter in as far as they did. But that's quite unusual. Even governing people are calling journalists and saying, do you have any idea what happened? Well, I certainly think that the attentiveness on the part of the peace movement across the United States and internationally has risen dramatically, and that's a good thing. And I think we just have to keep on, put our shoulder to the boulder, I guess, and just especially emphasize the idea of proliferation. These developments aren't that scientifically challenging that people couldn't make drones, launch drones, and if you can get rental of a satellite, then...
One of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that I noticed, the very pro-military people at the hearing who really, they just seemed enamored of it. Their one concern seemed to be, what if other people use drones as opposed to what are U.S. drones doing? Do you find that a very strange orientation, as I did?
Well, I think people are coached to feel fearful for their security, whereas in the United States, I think people are coached that way. And I think that if we could convince people that our security rests in feeding a hungry world and in assuring that other people don't have, grave and life-threatening grievances against us, then we would have a lot more security. But so much of our money is invested in the military-industrial complex and now the security-industrial complex. So, meanwhile,
when people see drones overhead in their own backyards, maybe they'll pay more attention because that's what's happening here too. And when
it was interesting
to talk to people about unlawful surveillance, and they're not involved in activism. They don't really care. They don't know it's them. But maybe if they think a drone will crash into their plane, it's always, Brian Wilson's quote: "They are not worth one bit less than we are not one bit more than they." How breaking through that mindset is a major challenge. You've been with these people for years.
Oh, it's been a privilege to be with the Afghan Peace Volunteers and the seamstresses.
And been with you.
Well, we get on.
Yes.
We get on, And one of our Voices people will head over on May 2nd to Iraq and start to move around Baghdad again. And it's been a long time since we've been able to enter into Baghdad. So I think it's good to say that we won't let war sever the bonds that exist between people. Where you stand determines what you see.
Exactly. That's beautifully said. Is there anything special that you want people to come away from this weekend, or will you be taking off before? You're giving a presentation, yeah?
Yeah, I do have a chance to be with people on a panel, Bruce Gagnon and David Swanson. But I think we also have to recognize that the more that we're pouring into the military and, analysis of patterns of life in Afghanistan, the less we have to deal with the grave terror that we really do face, which is the terror of what we're doing to our own environment.
Beautiful.
And so I hope climate change will come up in that regard.
The worst polluter on the planet.
Surely, yeah.
Thank you so very much. Maybe we'll talk to you later. But yes, I know. I feel that there's so much good intention here and so many people, you probably more than anyone, who work so hard, and getting through to other people is really difficult. It's sort of preaching to the fire over and over. So maybe the fire will get energized, right? Well,
each other. If we don't start to come to grips with, as what Jeremy said, the 21st century military. Because the greatest terror we all do face is the terror of climate change and global warming. And while we are allowing the military to take it on, the military-industrial complex and the security-industrial complex, to dominate our resources, our ingenuity, our creativity, our funding, we won't have what's needed in order to come to grips with what's an impending catastrophe, no doubt. We have to listen to the scientists. We're all at the same risk as the mother Zahra was underneath the drones, but we're not seeing it. The risks we face, catastrophes from famine, from water shortages, from the climate changes that will induce massive migrations amongst people who are suffering from famine and from shortages, the potential for pandemic diseases. These are the terrors that we should be grappling with, but we can't do it if we continue to allow the military to take off. And how does the military force us into obeisance? They keep telling us, your jobs depend on us. You rock this boat, you'll lose your jobs. And it can look that way until you listen to Bruce Gagnon explain the results of the Massachusetts Amherst study, which says that in fact more jobs, many, many more jobs would be created if we started to make things that are good for people, if we started to produce things that would help us face our current real situation. And that's why Ed Kenen and Jim Kuhn and Brian Haynes and Mark Sevilla Carver are in jail right now. They're thinking about us and they're thinking about our American slaves. And that's why it's important to go to jail. And that's why it's important to be grateful to every person in this Syracuse region and beyond who has helped to educate us. And it's taken years, but as Elliott said, we're ahead, we're getting ahead to educate us about the real world we're actually moving forward into, so that we can recognize that because of the children, because we are all part of one another, we need far more intelligence than the drones and all of their surveillance and all their analysis can ever offer us. So let's be smart, let's be together, let's catch courage from one another. Courage is always the ability to control our fears. And remember the Jesuit national anthem, be not afraid. Thank you.